Yo. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and I've got my wide receiver start and sit analysis for every matchup on the slate coming to you right now. It was a crazy week 9, not only from just a overall perspective. I mean, so many bad teams took down so many good teams this week. It felt like so many down performances from full teams, so many down performances from stars. I mean, this week was just, it was a crazy week. But we got to get back on the horse. We got to get ready to roll for week 10, and it all starts right here. So before we jump into the video, let's talk about our accuracy last week and how that went. Like I said, it was a crazy week, but overall for wide receivers, it went about is expected based on the week. So this past week we went in at 64% for the wide receiver position. I mean, we definitely missed on a few people, like Elijah Moore, Devontae Smith, Zacchaeus. I mean, just guys that you didn't really see big performances coming from. Hit on Hunter Renfrow, Christian Kirk, talked about AJ Brown, that being a hit as well. We'll talk about that a few minutes here in the wide receiver video, and you'll understand more why I'm saying he's a hit. But don't forget, we have got an awesome giveaway this month. We're giving away $500 in cold hard cash. So if you need some extra spending money for the holidays to buy some presents, you want to treat yourself, whatever it may be, make sure that you head over to prizepicks.com or download the app. Either or, doesn't matter. Create a free account by using the code word headliners and deposit $20. If you do that, not only are you going to make some money through Prize Picks, because we've been hot with our Prize Picks picks this year. Prize Picks picks. Okay, we'll roll with it. We've been hot with them this year, but if you win the $500, you're going to be rolling deep, baby. So it is time to jump into it, though. Let's go ahead and head into the analysis for the week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time to dive in off the deep end, starting with our Thursday night matchup, Baltimore at Miami. And for the Baltimore Ravens, Miami is giving up the third most fantasy points per game to wide receiver on the season, but they're giving up the most to wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. So the defense is actually getting worse as the season goes on. Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, both of these guys going to be starts for me, like I've talked about with Rashad Bateman. For those of you that are still thinking he's going to take over as the wide receiver 1, you got to stop doubting Marquise Brown. The dude is playing fantastic this season, and he is one of the 2 go-tos for Lamar Jackson. But that doesn't mean there isn't enough to go around for Rashad Bateman to be fantasy relevant. We just need to temper the expectations of what you think you're going to get from him. For the Miami Dolphins this week, Devontae Parker, Will Fuller, both dealing with injuries still. Jalen Waddle, really only trusting Waddle right now. And one of the reasons why is we can get him into the slot a little bit more often. Even last week, Jalen Waddle, over half of his snaps came out of the slot last week. And that was even with Parker and Will Fuller out. So they're still getting him into the slot as much as possible. The nickel corner or the slot corner, the guy that lines up over the slot wide receiver, for Baltimore, Tavon Young, he allows a completion percentage of over 80% to those slot wide receivers. So really like Jalen Waddle this week, but unfortunately, he's the only one of the group that I would trust. Atlanta at Dallas. And for the Atlanta Falcons, this is going to be very dependent on who lines up against who, especially for Russell Gage. Good week last week. I don't want to set him this week, but who is he going to see? Is he going to see Diggs or Brown? Now, so far this season, Diggs has only played in the slot 43 snaps. So well over 80% of his snaps are coming outside. But are they going to try to move him in to match up against Kyle Pitts this week? It's a possibility. If Diggs is going to be on Gage, Gage is a sit for me. If Brown is going to be on Gage and Diggs is going to look to Kyle Pitts more often, Russell Gage would be a start for me. But there's no way of telling that right now just because of the fact that Diggs hasn't been in the slot at all this season outside of those 43 snaps. For me, in Dallas, it would be hard to assume that all of a sudden Dallas is going to move him into the slot out of nowhere and say, oh, okay, here we go. Get it done in the slot. Take out Kyle Pitts, when they haven't done that much this season. So I think he's still going to be outside, and that's why I'm going to sit Russell Gage for right now. For Dallas, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. Lamb is going to be able to get back to the slot this week. Why? Michael Gallup is going to be back. Michael Gallup practicing, expected back this week as long as there's not a setback in practice. We got Gallup back outside. We've got Cooper back outside, and we've got CeeDee Lamb back in the slot where he can be a mismatch all the time. New Orleans and Tennessee, and as of this recording, I don't think we're 100% certain who the quarterback for New Orleans is going to be this week. Now, Simeon by far played the most, but at one point, Taysom Hill did come in, completed 3 straight passes. Are they going to go back to Taysom Hill? What are they thinking this week going up against a Tennessee team that even without Derrick Henry went into LA and got a big time win? The New Orleans Saints are going to want to stop Tennessee and stop their winning streak this week. They're going to want to get a dub while in Tennessee. So they're going to go with whoever they think obviously gives them the best chance to win. But in reality, who is that? Because I don't know if I can even tell you at this point. So for the wide receivers, the problem is with these guys, it's who are you going to play on a weekly basis, right? Who's going to be the guy? I mean, Traquan Smith came back from injury. He's actually not looked too bad. Marquez Callaway looks like he's going to be the guy one week, and then he isn't. Like this past week, yeah, he scored a touchdown. He didn't really get anything outside of that. Deontay Harris, he's the guy that got all the volume. But in other weeks, that hasn't been the case. It's been flip-flop, and now Traquan Smith. So for me personally, we do have 4 buys again this week. I mean, we've got the Bears, Cincinnati, the Giants, and Houston. So we're not missing a ton of wide receivers this week. So the landscape isn't as bad for me where I would say, do we have to force the issue and try to start one of these guys? Me personally, no, I'm staying away from all of them. For Tennessee, though, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. Okay, listen, chap. Just a quick soapbox for me. Last week, you heard me talk about A.J. Brown, and some of you commented on the way that I talked about him and how I basically said, y'all got to make your own decision. Now, the reason I said that is because I had A.J. Brown as a sit. And after talking with Jake and the rest of the guys about it, they said, why not list him a different way? Because part of our concern with our start and sit videos this season is that people are just looking at what we write and they're not listening to the actual analysis behind why we think they are a sit. So last week with A.J. Brown, you didn't see sit for me. You just heard the analysis, okay? Now, yeah, it's easy for me to say, yeah, I said the sit, but if you ask any of the guys, though, I told him he was a sit. My notes had him as a sit all week, but I didn't list him as anything because I wanted you to hear the analysis, and it came to fruition. He only scored 6 fantasy points. So a little bit, listen, I've had 3 major calls this year. DeAndre Hopkins is a sit, A.J. Brown is a sit, and DK Metcalf is a sit. I've only missed on one of them, and that was DK Metcalf. But of course, the big misses are always going to outweigh the big gets, the big hits, because that's just how it is around here, unfortunately. But I just wanted to make a note of that real quick so you understood why I did what I did last week. But now we're going to get back to it. A.J. Brown going to be another start for me this week. Julio's finally looking healthy. Hopefully it stays that way. Now, one of the reasons I'm starting A.J. Brown and Julio Jones this week, who's Marshawn Lattimore going to face? I have a feeling he's going to go with Julio Jones. He's more familiar with Julio Jones. All their matchups over the years while he was in Atlanta. For Lattimore, it just feels like, he's going to be more comfortable matched up on Julio because that's who he's faced so much in the past. So we're going to go ahead and put him on Julio now. Regardless of who it is, though, Lattimore has been very good this year, okay? He's barely allowing 50% of the passes coming his way to be completed. But his yards per reception allowed is over 20. So the big plays are still there. So even if one of these two have a little bit less volume this week or a little bit less catches because of Lattimore, they're one play away from snapping off a huge reception on him and making their day. Jacksonville at Indianapolis. And for Jacksonville, I don't want to do it, but man, I got to start Jamal Agnew this week. I mean, Indianapolis allows the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. And, so in that case, because it is a secondary that can get burned by the wide receivers, how do you sit all 3 of these guys? So at that point, I got to take a step back and I got to look at recent trends and see who has actually been performing the best. Well, that's going to be Jamal Agnew. He has seen the most targets so far this season, or over the course, not this season, but over the course of the last few weeks. It's not Marvin Jones. It's not Laviska Shenault. So I'm going to go with what the recent trends have shown, and I'm going to go with Jamal Agnew, even though I hate it, and it makes me sick. For Indianapolis, who are we going to go with Indianapolis this week? Well, of course, Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be the play. But outside of that, really, who else? Who else? Now, T.Y. Hilton is still in the concussion protocol. It is Jacksonville, but Jacksonville out of nowhere last week. What are you doing, Jacksonville? What are you doing? Holy cow. Coming out of nowhere, looking like a decent team. Congratulations to you. But anyway, Michael Pittman is really the only guy for the Indianapolis Colts that I can trust right now for many different reasons. One of those might be Jonathan Taylor. They're going to keep running the ball with him, which is going to limit the amount of volume to everybody else. Cleveland at New England, and I love seeing my boy Donovan Peoples-Jones burning some people. Talked about him on the waiver wire show. I mean, before the injury, he was starting to really hit his stride with some big-time plays. And then the injury he had brought him back down. Now he's back. No more OBJ. And because of that, DPJ is the big-time threat in that offense now. And, here's the thing. There's more than enough targets for the wide receivers now. I mean, the tight ends aren't getting any looks really out of maybe some red zone touches here or there. Kareem Hunt obviously is hurt. So a lot of the targets for the wide receivers right now. And for that reason, both Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones can exist together and get more than enough targets. And it's scary to think, look at the big play ability for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Just wait until they get into more matchups, maybe like New England here, where they're not just going to be able to lean on the run so much, they're going to have to throw it a little bit. Because of that, it's just going to lead to more targets for him. If Baker Mayfield is feeling that connection, expect more of the same coming up. For New England, Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, N'Keal Harry. Why are all 4 of them sits for me? Well, they've only had a wide receiver score in the top 20 4 times this season. The highest was Kendrick Bourne back in week 3, where he was the wide receiver 9. And the next highest was Kendrick Bourne at wide receiver 16 in week 7. There's nothing to see here with this group of guys. Maybe they have a big play every once in a while. And yeah, maybe, Nelson Aguilar scores a touchdown on a trick play of all plays. But here's the thing. We're not trusting any of these guys right now. They're running the ball a lot. Hunter Henry's kind of the go-to in the red zone. They're passing the ball to the running backs quite a bit. And Jacoby Myers has now set an NFL record for the most receiving yards in NFL history without scoring a touchdown. All right, Buffalo, I got to have a talk with you here. One of the reasons why is because I can't have you getting my boy Chris Chouse in such a bad mood on Sundays, okay? He's struggling with y'all right now because you're letting him down. I need y'all to stop playing down to your competition, okay? You're a great team. You play up to your competition, and you perform excellent. And then all of a sudden, some of these games, it's like, we'll figure it out. And then you don't. Okay, stop playing down to your competition. Play above it all the time. So, back to Stefon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders. Dawson Knox potentially back, but haven't heard whether or not that's actually going to happen. Tough week last week, but we need them to bounce back against the Jets, and I think they're going to happen. And Cole Beasley talked about it a little bit last week, and I've talked about it on several videos. If there's no Dawson Knox, Cole Beasley is getting those targets. Now, he got a lot of targets last week, but he didn't get any receiving yards. He was getting shut down like that. Hopefully that changes this week against the New York Jets. And with the New York Jets, Crowder, Moore, Cole, all of them are going to be sits for me. Don't trust any of them in this matchup. It's a tough matchup. Don't see the upside. Don't even know who's going to be playing quarterback at this point, and no idea when Corey Davis is going to be coming back. So, again, In a week where we're not missing a ton of wide receivers, I'm not trusting any of these guys. Detroit at Pittsburgh, Khalif Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kaderil Hodge. I don't care about y'all. Why? Because none of you are consistent and the Lions suck. Listen, there are 3 things that we know about this Lions team. Number 1, DeAndre Swift is going to get targets out of the backfield. Number 2, TJ Hockenson is going to get targets at tight end. Number 3, the wide receiver 1 on this team is going to change every single week because there is no consistency with this team whatsoever. Raymond, St. Brown, Hodge, not trusting any of them. For Pittsburgh, though, you know what? We'll continue to trust Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. Pittsburgh shouldn't have any issues with this game, being at home, being against Detroit. Probably going to see a lot of Najee Harris. The ceiling of DJ, Clay, and even Pat Freiermuth, who I'll have as a start, and you'll hear about it in this tight end video. The ceiling's probably going to get a little bit lower on them this week. So even though I have these 2 listed as starts, I wouldn't expect the ceilings to be that high. Tampa Bay and Washington, and oh my gosh, it could be super fun to watch Chris Godwin and Mike Evans against Washington, a team that has allowed the 2nd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers this season, a team that isn't creating as much pressure as it has in the past, and a team that is going to be missing Antonio Brown for what looks like another game. As of today, as of this recording, he's still in a walking boot. So I'm going to list him as injured out doubtful this week. But Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, we have seen it with these 2 guys in the past. If there's no AB and it's a defense they can exploit, oh my God, they're going to do it. Both of these guys are going to be wide receiver 1 plays for me this week. For Washington, well, first off, Curtis Samuel, not even listed here. Why? Because we don't even know what's going on with the guy. They've talked about having him back, but now there's been some comments about how there might be some frustrations with him. With the growing injury, a lot of people are saying, is it really the growing? Like, if it's been this bad, why hasn't he had surgery yet? So, Adam Humphries, Dyami Brown, DeAndre Carter are going to be the other guys outside of Terry McLaurin, but Terry McLaurin is the only guy I'm going to trust in this offense. I mean, the Bucs were one of the worst teams at the beginning of the season in terms of allowing fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, but over the last 4 weeks, on a per game basis, or the last 4 games on a per game basis, they're only allowing 19 fantasy points per game. Now, granted, the opponents haven't been that great. That's still impressive nonetheless. Carolina at Arizona, and apparently Carolina doesn't need Kyler Murray to win football games, but I digress. Carolina first. DJ Moore is going to be my only start. I mean, this offense is a freaking mess right now, but how can you afford to sit a guy like DJ Moore who's still getting targets, who's still making plays, but just hasn't seen the upside? Now we've got Terrace Marshall Jr. back. Willie Snead has signed, and he saw some game action last week. So hopefully, and now Christian McCaffrey, hopefully him being back was kind of the missing piece on this team, and getting him back is going to push this team further and further up the consistency board than what we've seen so far this season. I mean, Robbie Anderson isn't taking targets from, Terrace Marshall isn't, and Willie Snead isn't, but hopefully maybe they spread it out a little bit, gets Christian McCaffrey back. That's going to help getting DJ Moore rolling a little bit more. Now for Arizona, I'm going to list DeAndre Hopkins as injured out doubtful for right now because I don't really know when he's expected back. He was basically, he was basically listed as questionable all week and then became doubtful Sunday morning. But based on the reports, I never really expected him to play all week anyway. It didn't sound good. So I don't know if I really trust that he's going to be back this week. So for right now, I'm just going to wait. We'll address it again in the rankings videos if we think he might end up being back. But if he doesn't play, AJ Green is expected to be back. Christian Kirk would also be a start for me. Like, if you're missing the wide receiver 1 on this team, Christian Kirk, I'm automatically locking in. Like, you take out DeAndre Hopkins, you take out AJ Green, and you give Christian Kirk the volume, he's going to perform like he did last week. Now, I didn't have him listed. Well, I didn't know that AJ Green and DeAndre Hopkins were both going to be missing when I did my start sit video last week. So hopefully you listen to the rankings when I talked about it later on. But Christian Kirk, I mean, he's a guy that you got to lock in if those guys are going to be missing time. Minnesota at the Los Angeles Chargers is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Don't forget our friends over at Manscaped are sponsoring us here for a 2nd season. And if you've got some holiday shopping to do, some presents to buy for somebody, you can do it at manscaped.com. Code word headliners when you check out. You're going to get 20% off your entire purchase, and you're going to get free shipping. So manscaped.com, whether it's a gift for you or for somebody else, it would be a great idea for Christmas. Now, for Minnesota, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. It's going to be another tough matchup with LAC this week. But the thing about this is both guys, they have the big playability. Adam Thielen has the opportunities in the red zone. And that helps me when I look at a tough matchup and I say, even though the volume might be lower, the explosiveness, I forgot. I don't even know what I was trying to say there. The explosiveness is still there. The red zone targets for Thielen are still there. You can start them in these situations. You just kind of sometimes have to temper those expectations in terms of the amount of volume you may end up seeing. Now, for the Los Angeles Chargers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams coming into this season, okay? You had Keenan Allen over here. He was the target hog, the guy running all the routes, getting the volume. All of it was there for him. Mike Williams is over here. Big games every once in a while. Dude would explode. Dude would have big catches. But he was more along the lines of being that deep threat. Get to week 1 this week. Whoop, or this season. Switch him around. Now, we've got Mike Williams on this side. Now he's being used more in the Keenan Allen role, where he's all over the field running different routes, really expanding the route tree. And you see with the volume he's getting, he's scoring touchdown. He looks unstoppable. Keenan Allen on the other side, not seeing as much volume, but some of those bigger plays were opening up for him because of where Mike Williams was playing. Now, let's grab Mike Williams and bring him back over here and grab Keenan Allen and bring him back because they've reverted back again, ladies and gentlemen. If you're concerned about Mike Williams, I get it. I don't know why all of a sudden LA has changed this because it was working for them to begin the season. And now over the last 3 weeks, Keenan Allen is seeing all that volume again, running all of the routes in the route tree. And Mike Williams is the guy that isn't doing that anymore. Now, why is it? Is it just because now he's seeing cornerback 1 coverage and it's getting tougher for him and it's opening up Keenan Allen for better routes? I don't know. But I'm going to need the Chargers to get back to what they were doing at the beginning of the season because it was working for everybody. Keenan Allen is becoming a guy that's going back into the top 10 because of the volume now. Mike Williams is slowly dropping down the rankings because he's becoming more and more big play dependent. And honestly, I just don't love that. Philly and Denver get to play each other this week. Devontae Smith, he's going to be the only start for me. Why? Because Jalen Hurts is only throwing it like 17 times a game. What are you doing, Eagles? You have Miles Sanders, and he's healthy, but you never run the football. You make Jalen Hurts pass it like crazy. Now Miles Sanders gets hurt. You don't have Miles Sanders anymore, and now all of a sudden you want to start handing the ball to Jordan Howard and Boston Scott as many times as you can a game. Why do NFL head coaches do this to us? Why? I believe 50% of us knew what Jalen Hurts was going to be coming into the season. Wrote about it in the draft guide. Had him listed as a bust. Really, the only thing that saved him so far this season is his rushing ability because the passing just hasn't been there outside of a couple of weeks. But now all of a sudden we're only throwing it 17 times a game. And we're expecting the wide receivers to do anything? I mean, hell, Devontae Smith isn't even going to do anything on a weekly basis. Last week, he had big plays, big receptions. If that doesn't come against Denver, the volume isn't going to be there. He's not going to be able to make it. But I'm going to have to list him as a start because he's really the only wide receiver that you can trust. He is the guy that Jalen Hurts is basically locked into. And I expect the Eagles to be down in Denver this week. Now for the Denver Broncos, I'm waiting to hear about Darius Slay. Like, he left in the 4th game this past week with a hammy injury. I'm going to go all 3 for starts right now, but I don't like that by any means. Now, why am I doing all 3 and why don't I like it? Well, the reason I don't like it is because Philadelphia allows the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, but they allow the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. I'm expecting a lot of Melvin Gordon and a lot of Javonte Williams this week. Oh my gosh. A ton of them this week, which is going to limit the upside, especially if all 3 of these guys are going to get targets. Now, I'm basically pushing out the tight ends this week and throwing them to the side. If Darius Slay ends up playing this week, Courtland Sutton will be a sit for me because I expect Courtland Sutton to see Darius Slay. That is where the ceiling is going to come crashing down for him. So then if we know the volume may not go that way because it's a tougher matchup, it's going to have to go to Patrick and Judy to help out with that. And then those guys will stay starts for me. Now, if Darius Slay doesn't play this week, all three of these guys are starts. Roll your dice. Ask your Magic 8 Ball. It doesn't matter because it's going to be a shot in the dark regardless. Seattle at Green Bay, and heading into this matchup, it's all going to be about, are the quarterbacks going to be back? Russell Wilson has been cleared to return, but no confirmation on whether or not he will actually play this week. Aaron Rodgers still has to jump through a couple of more hoops in the COVID protocols. He's got to test negative back-to-back tests within 24 hours of each other. Excuse me. And he's going to have to be asymptomatic, which based on what I'm hearing, he probably is asymptomatic as it is already. Just need to get those negative tests. So we'll have to wait to hear more on that. Now, if Russell Wilson is back, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you're absolutely locking these two in this week. If for some reason he doesn't make it back, we're still going to start them. We're just going to expect a little bit of a lower ceiling. For Green Bay on their side, I'm going to go with Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, under the assumption, kind of like with Russell Wilson, that Aaron Rodgers could be back this week. I'm going to talk about them as he will be playing. And if there's one thing we've learned about Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't really like it when people talk about him in any sort of a negative way. Now, some of that, and I'm not getting into it here, may have been brought on that himself this past week, but you can still clearly tell that he's frustrated about the negative publicity he's gotten this week, or the publicity that is just not football related. So do you think he's going to come out and want to fire on all cylinders if he gets to play this Sunday? Yeah, me too. And because of that, Devontae Adams and the big playmaker down the seam, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I like Aaron Rodgers to hook up with him for a big-time touchdown against a defense that has given up some big-time plays this season. KC at Las Vegas, and KC is, they're a mess right now. I mean, it's probably a good thing Aaron Rodgers was out this past week, or they may have lost to Green Bay at home. They kind of lucked out on that one. Patrick Mahomes, and the whole offense just isn't playing that well right now. Why is it? Okay. I don't think anybody's really been able to attribute it to one thing. You know, some people are saying it's because of the wide receiver, but it's not like Sammy Watkins did anything while he was in Kansas City. So I don't really think that has a whole lot to do with it. But for me, for Kansas City, Tyreek Hill is the only guy that we can trust right now. And for Las Vegas, we are going to go to Hunter Renfrow again. We had him as a start last week. After, obviously, the start-sit video last week came out before the Henry Ruggs incident. After the Henry Ruggs incident, I posted a comment right away, said obviously Ruggs didn't matter at that point anymore, and that we were going with Hunter Renfrow as our start, and Hunter Renfrow as our start. And we're going to do the same thing again this week. Now, Deshaun Jackson has signed in Las Vegas. I love that signing for this team. I would not be surprised if he plays this week, if he doesn't snap off a big-time play, but I'm not ready to trust in that just yet. I'm going to give it a couple of more days, and if I change my mind on that one, keep an eye on the rankings video. You could find him in the top 50. The Rams are going to head into San Francisco, and the Rams are going to be the Rams are going to be more upset than a horde of hornets that built their nest on a garage door. I don't really know what that means, but they're going to be upset. That's my way of conveying that message to you. Awful performance at home. I mean, essentially, I don't want to take anything away from Tennessee. They played great. But the Rams kind of handed that game to them, or a majority of it. Made some really bad plays. Matthew Stafford, looking at you, my man. And because of that, it led to a lot of points for Tennessee. They're going to want to bounce back. They get to go on the road to a division rival to do it. I expect that bounce back. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, both should have good games against San Francisco. And for the 49ers, hopefully having kind of an extra day of rest now for Deebo Samuel, gets him feeling just a little bit better, gets him closer to 100%, and then he gets back out there against the Rams, and then he really is able to have a big day against them. Again, Deebo Samuel, he doesn't concern me as much as some of the other wide receivers because of what they do to move him around the formation. They do a really, really good job of giving him away from top coverage. And because of that, it kind of keeps top coverage people like Jalen Ramsey away from him. So I like Deebo Samuel to have a good game this week if he, in fact, can get back to full health. There you have it, Headliner Nation. My Week 10 start and sit analysis is in the books. Hit the like button for me. And if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, you got to subscribe and stick around. But more importantly, in the comments, leave me a comment down below and let me know who is your matchup to watch this week. What is a player you've got your eye on? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to get out of here, though. Y'all stay safe and y'all stay healthy. I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.